Hi, good morning. Thank you for tuning into my show called Hustler. This is Gurpreet Kaurman. I'm back with a great guest today, another great, amazing individual. We're going to switch it up a little bit. Um, I have an amazing guest. She will introduce herself, tell you about her journey, but she actually wants to talk on a topic that a lot of us are struggling with, which is fear. So, I want to welcome my guest, Rosalin. And Rosalin's going to talk about, she actually posted a video on this a few days ago. So we're going to talk about how we as individual engage with fear. So let's take a moment to introduce Rosalin. Hi, Rosalin.
Hey, Gurpreet, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. So welcome to Hustler. Let's start with, how about you introduce yourself? You're a speaker, writer, editor, you're a former academic coach. So take a minute to kind of introduce yourself and your journey thus far.
Well, I help people get unstuck. I especially help people who feel lost, who feel overwhelmed, who especially had all of this feel exacerbated under COVID, and who really feel that they don't know where to start. And a lot of them just don't believe in themselves. And that's all too familiar to me. I still have moment to moment bouts where I don't believe in myself. So my practices are based in transparency, in vulnerability, and honesty, and sharing everything I've learned, every training, every revelation down to the last second.
Wow. uh, Unstuck. So you help people get unstuck. This is amazing. Why? Because, well, I myself has been there more times than I would like to admit, and it's nice to have someone to work with to help you get unstuck. So speaking on getting unstuck, why do people, from your experience and your wealth of knowledge, what are common grounds, or I hate boxing things, but if you had to give like common three things that typically lead someone to getting stuck, what would that be?
No, boxing's good, Gurpreet, because I'm all about precision and exactitude. Because a lot of people are walking around saying, well, I don't know what to do. Do I send a LinkedIn invitation? You got to start with a plan. But in order to get to a plan, you actually have to sit down, kind of put your butt down on a chair, kitchen table, coffee table, backyard, whatever, and take this kind of ancient utensil, the pen,
Yeah.
and you sit down and you ask, why am I stuck? I began doing this probably about, oh gosh, 2 years ago, but really fine tuning it for myself, I would say at the height of the pandemic, because I thought I'm reading all this self help, I'm following all these coaches. This sounds good, but I don't know where to start because I really didn't understand what was going on in my head. So when I work with somebody, including myself, I say, sit down and ask yourself. So, for example, what am I afraid of? And what's keeping me up at night? Why do I feel lost in the morning? Why am I getting up at 10, 11 o'clock in the morning when I know I could be doing something more productive, in the first 2 hours of the morning? And I noticed overall that there's a reluctance, I think both conscious and unconscious, to actually have the courage to ask yourself, why do I self sabotage? Why am I lost to myself? And knowing that gave me a lot more courage. And I thought, wow, you're pretty brave, Rosalind. You actually have the courage to sit down and ask yourself the hardest questions that
Yes.
most of us avoid asking ourselves. So, Gurpreet, in general, we are people, we are avoiding ourselves, what's bothering us, what hurts us. And we do this under the guise of being busy. Oh, I'm so busy, I'm busy. And meanwhile, you're being busy, but you're not really, taking care of yourself. And taking care of yourself means asking yourself the hard questions, listening for the answers you may not want to hear. And I'll talk more about that later on. And also taking action. You might have to do something. You might actually have to do something imperfectly, where you don't compare yourself to everyone else, because you're still much too much of jockeying for position about who does things better. And frankly, that's not going to help you. So I think people are just in denial, afraid to actually have a serious conversation. So they're
And so
like, so they're treading water, you know, and hoping for the best. Well, hoping for the best without a strategy, without honesty and transparency, will not get you anywhere. It'll make you more frustrated.
you said something very powerful, which is taking the time to sit there and ask yourself, why do I feel like this? And a lot of us, you're right, a lot of us run away from having those real hard conversations with ourselves. Tons of us do this. And I want to make sure that everybody understands that there's nothing wrong with that. But you can't change something if you're not willing to take a hard look on the why. And until you're not ready, nothing in your life is going to change. You're still going to keep doing uh, you're going to keep doing the same behaviors, the same patterns. You're going to keep getting the same outcome, and you're going to keep getting frustrated and asking yourself, well, why does this keep happening to me? Why is this happening? But until you don't overcome that fear, because yes, a lot of us are afraid to have that hard conversation because it's a little bit easier to brush it off and go your day, keep yourself busy so you don't have to think about it. But guess what? When night comes, and this is why a lot of people struggle with sleeping and actually getting good night's sleep, is because when the night comes, you're lying in bed, there's no distraction, you don't have devices because you're trying to sleep, but your mind is now working, and then your soul is starting to talk to you to get you to, hey, subconsciously, you know why you're unstuck, but you're leaving it in the subconscious mind versus bringing it into the conscious mind where you have to deal with it. So we keep pushing it back, but there's only so much you can keep pushing back. Eventually, there's going to be a bomb. I call it the bomb. It's like a ticking bomb waiting to explode if you don't address it. And you can avoid the explosion, and the explosion is going to be bad.
Yep.
Like bad.
It's true. It's
But
true.
but if you don't deal with it, that explosion is going to happen. You can't. It's not avoidable. The only way to avoid it is to actually have that hard conversation. Now, someone is asking how, which I also wanted to ask was, well, how does someone get the courage? You said you sat there and you did it. How did you get that courage to do it?
Good question. I think it comes with a lot of self reflection. And I'll be honest, Gurpreet, I wasn't nice to myself. It took me a long time. And my therapist, was it Rosalin? We're calling this compassionate curiosity. I go, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I thought, and I wouldn't tell her. I go, damn you, Rosalyn. You know what? But till about a month ago, I finally realized. So where I can't see the comments, but number one, you have to be nice to yourself. It sounds like a cliche. Karan, Verma, we've got you covered. Don't worry about it. You have to be nice to yourself. And if you can, now, can I make you sit down? Can I tie you down? Can I tape you down to a chair? I cannot do that for you. You're going to need to do it for yourself. But I can only encourage you just to do it. And once you break that seal, that mental seal that you're imposing, you'll feel so much better. And eventually it'll become a practice. Because even me, when I get rusty, I go, you need to sit down, don't you, this morning? Yeah, yeah. And I did it this morning, yesterday actually. And my God, it was so incredible. I yielded amazing results, a plan of action for something I was avoiding. And I feel more energized. I can, like, really. So I can only say this: have the fun. If you don't have the courage now, when are you going to have it? And for the
Yeah.
people who are young watching this, I'm at the grand old age of 55. I'm going to be very blunt. You may not reach my age. You may not have, like I had, 20, 30 chances. We've only got today. So my hope is that after this broadcast is finished, you will make yourself a nice tea, nice water, sit down with no agenda, no judgment, and write down what what's bothering me right now. Why am I angry? Why am I feeling lost? I'll give you an example, Gurpreet. I work with people who are afraid to get on camera, who are afraid to be fully themselves in a network, Zoom, because, oh my God, look at me, my hair is a mess. I don't speak English well. I'm not a professional. I don't want to be seen, which is talk about shooting yourself in the foot. So I say, you have to ask yourself why. What are you afraid of? And what you're going to find out is all those fears are unfounded and self manufactured, but you have to ask you, write them down and speak to them because you have a choice. I think many people think I cannot change the way I think. Well, I'm proof that you can change the way you think. I grew up in a very harsh family with a very abusive father who took every chance to diminish me. So, and I worked very hard to recover from that. And I'm still in recovery. But a little bit of recovery goes a long way. You just have to start and be nice to yourself and don't shame the answer. Don't, oh, this is a stupid answer. It's an answer and it gives you a place to start. So I hope I answered the question.
I also think that sometimes instead of dealing with the actual core issue or whatever you're feeling, sometimes we mask things or we turn to other things for temporary happiness. But it's just like a bandage you're putting on than to deal with the actual core issue. For example, like let's take marriage, for example. Instead of dealing with the issues, let's say you're having with your partner, and let's say you're not happy, hence why a lot of people cheat or, have an affair, because instead of actually dealing with the issue at hand, you're running away with it and you're finding temporary happiness somewhere else, but the issue's still there. The issue's not going anywhere just because you start engaging with other people. Why does that happen? In your experience, why do people mask and run away and find alternative to temporary relief, what they're feeling, and get the temporary happiness versus actually focusing on getting permanent peace and happiness?
We're prayed because it's so familiar. We tell ourselves it's easier and we've been doing it for so long, running away from ourselves, right? Running away from what matters. But you know what? You can't you can't run away from any of it. It'll show up in envy, in jealousy, dissatisfaction, bitterness, and in some cases, serious health problems. I can speak to that. I ran away from myself and I have to deal with trauma and addiction, food addiction. And I understand, the price I've paid from running away from what needed my attention. And unfortunately, actually, if you follow the work of Dr. Gabor Mate, a fellow Canadian, he speaks volumes about how we, are addiction machines because we often just don't refuse to look at what needs to be looked at. And actually, I say you gotta choose your pain. You want to choose the pain of being stuck or choose the pain of going forward? I'm more often than not lately, I choose the pain of going forward.
Okay, so this all stems from fear. Underlining issues is a fear attached to addressing it or taking action or really getting candid with yourself first. And then if it's involving another person, let's say if it's a marriage, then it involves someone else and having that conversation. So the underlining is fear. And it's hence the topic of what you want to talk about today was how do you engage with fear? So how does one engage with fear?
Well, yeah, well, I'm going to tease it. It's a bit more complex.
Mm.
There's a kind of this unspoken philosophy out there like, oh, you can be fearless, or people who are fearful are weak. That is not true.
No.
Every time you see someone courageous, they've got fear. Whenever I've had to be my most courageous, especially this week on LinkedIn with one of my comments, man, there was a big pushback, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it because I got to do what I got to do. And so you got to get rid of the myths around fear that somehow fear is abnormal. It is not abnormal. If it was, every species has it. It only becomes a problem when when it overwhelms you and you feel you can't get out from under it. So what I suggest is when I talked about writing down stuff at the beginning, you got to write down the fears. Write them down. At least you can see them, because most people have fears and they don't write them down, and they aren't conscious of all the fears. You need to get conscious of all the fears.
My coach made me do this.
Yeah, write them down. And once you've written them down, you know where to start. You go, oh, is that what it is? And then ask yourself, where does this fear come from? Because it was
Yeah.
learned. Babies aren't born being afraid to do public speaking. Okay, it's learned. It is learned. So therefore, you can unlearn it. But most of all, give back that fear to the person who taught it to you, to the person who gave it to you. I was raised by two very fearful people, which makes sense because of what happened to them, during the Holocaust. I'd be fearful too. So, but I learned that I have to get a handle on this fear. It's not my fear, and I want to do more than just function. I want to excel. I want to thrive. So write down the fears. Don't shame them, and don't go, "Oh, this is illogical." Fear is not logical.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. And also focus on being present, right? If you've got an internet connection, you're watching Gurpreet, me on the show, you're doing really well. So when you write this down and you stay present, you really give yourself perspective, and perspective is everything.
You said something very interesting. First of all, sorry that you had to go through such a difficult upbringing with two parents who had fears, which makes sense of the situations and traumas that they went through. Now, you said something very interesting as you were talking about this. You said they weren't your fears. How did you come to realize that, wait, this is not my fear? This is my parents' fear that's been instilled in me. How did you recognize that?
Because as I went through trauma recovery therapy, you get asked to talk about moments where moments where you experience something traumatic. And I said, well, I remember, for example, my mother always used to say, don't answer the door. As a kid, don't answer the door. Or whenever we got a phone call back in the day when we had a landline, say, who is it? Who is it? So, so I understood, I remembered that those were taught to me. But what I didn't understand was that you can actually give them back. There's a wonderful ritual I learned from the wonderful Raj Kumari Yogi, who's an executive coach, also Canadian, who's based in the San Francisco Bay Area. And we did a ritual last year in her epigenetics boot camp in October. And it was amazing. We had to imagine a big pot or vat. We put in all the stuff that no longer serves us, that was never ours to begin with. And we walk it over to the person who gave it to us, and they accept it and they give it to the person who gave it to them. So you go all the way back in your family tree and you give it back. And I found this exercise very liberating. But most of all, once you understand that it wasn't yours and that you can create your own beliefs, your own manifesto, you're going to feel a lot better about the choices you're going to make from then on.
You said unlearn. You can unlearn it. How can you? If it's been so deeply ingrained in you, depending on how old you are, then you've been carrying it for that many years. Let's say like I'm 41 and that's been instilled in me for 41 years. I've been carrying it for 41 years.
Yeah.
I just want to disclaimer, guys, like you can unlearn anything, but it's a journey. And
Yes,
it's not going to happen overnight.
it is. It's hard
You have to
work,
make a
but
commitment to it.
yes, but there's a thing called neuroplasticity. And people used to think the human brain was set, it is the way it is for your life, and you can't change it, where actually you can. And one of the most important mantras my trauma therapist taught me last year was, I choose to think differently, I choose to let go. So I acknowledge the thought, And okay, thought. Nope, this isn't a good thought for me. And I say, I choose to think differently. I choose to let go. And I write down my own affirmations, meaning,
Powerful.
I can, I am overcoming these situations. I believe in myself. And by the way, when you write affirmations, they only work in the present tense. So you don't say I will, you just say
Mhm.
I am. So you can't,
Exactly.
don't say I will be peaceful, say I am peaceful, right?
Also, I think affirmations are great words. Great words are so powerful, but you have to also recognize and be gentle with yourself. I think a lot of times, as you kept saying, harsh. Yes, when we being aware. I think a lot of us, when you commit to yourself and you want to change. First, we can't change other people. We can only change ourselves.
Exactly.
And we are the co-creators of our life. Everything that happens to us is happening to us because subconsciously we're creating it because of the fears, self-limiting beliefs and doubts and so on that we have. The other person is just mirroring us and triggering us, the parts of us that need to be healed and worked on. But the most powerful thing I've learned to do is that it doesn't matter what someone else is doing. I have a choice on how I react. Do I react rationally all the time? No.
Mhm.
Do I react perfectly all the time? No. But I've learned to, when I don't, to take a step back and ask myself, why did I react this way? Why? What caused me to, let's say, lash out at somebody and say the words I did? And one of the biggest thing is you learn that it's your own insecurities that you have about yourself. I'm only talking about me here,
Mhm.
that triggered to the point where you just kind of like lashed out on someone. And the words are powerful, but the powerfulness comes if you actually take a step back and first recognize and be gentle with yourself and love yourself. And it's okay. We're human beings. We are going to slip up. We're going to make mistakes. We are going to one day act crazy. And next day we might be perfectly calm and think, but that's a journey. It's a process. And I always say words are really powerful. And the more you say it, the more you can unwire and uncondition your mind. Sleep affirmations help too to uncondition and unwire yourself. But the most powerful thing is just being patient to yourself and recognizing that you're not perfect, but each situation will teach you something. But you consciously have to make a choice of changing, that you don't want to keep repeating the cycle. You don't want to keep repeating the patterns, and you don't want to keep reliving these moments because the core line issue you haven't dealt with. Now, how can one, um, so engaging with fear, so writing it down, but how do you take step
Excuse me.
further from that? Once you've written it down, all the fears you have, what should one do next? What would step two be?
So once you've written them down, you get to the core of them. You ask yourself. So let's say, for example, there's the big term imposter syndrome is being all over the place. If you, for example, if you fear public speaking, and one of the core beliefs is, well, you know what, I'm not good enough. You've got to figure out a way to change. I'm not good enough. So, for example, you may want to follow Louise Hay's 21 Days of Mirror Affirmations. So, because you have to give yourself the nurturing you didn't get. It's about learning how to reparent yourself. So, what I do now, excuse me, is I've learned how to reparent myself. And as I reparent myself, I reparent the people I work with and I teach them how to reparent themselves. So, for example,
Can I interject there for a second? Let's take a pause. You said reparent yourself.
yes,
How?
you first,
How
so
would you
remember,
first even identify that you need to reparent yourself?
well, I knew it. I knew it right away. I knew it right away. So, for example, I'm not going to say, you know what? you're a loser and you'll never amount to anything. Okay. So, for example, my father had pretty much nothing very positive ever to say about me. In fact, he didn't believe that women should work outside the home. He told me I should better peel a potato and get married and have babies. That's what he told me. So that's not good parenting, Gurpreet. That's not good parenting. So I, of course, would never ever say that to myself or to anyone. So good parenting, reparenting for me looks like getting up in the morning and having my glass of water with lemon, doing my 10 minutes of aerobics, even when I don't want to do them. I used to think, oh, I'll do it later. I thought, no, we all have to do things that we don't like to do. And I thought, you're going to do them. So that could be, for example, is creating a morning ritual, a morning schedule. For me, in recovery, I definitely need a scheduled morning. So I worked out 7 points. So mine is drink water, exercise, do your Louise Hayes mirror work, do the affirmations, and then I do my so I try to make my inner child work. It's very important to nurture your inner child because most of us are neglecting him or her, and this inner child is dying to connect with you.
So I'm going to interject one more time because inner child, um, those that may not know what that means, what does inner child mean?
Your inner child is the
What is inner child?
inner child is really the core person of who you were in childhood. And in many cases, this inner child has been neglected. But this inner child has been so powerful. She has helped you survive the hardest things in your life. And God knows mine did. But what happens is that, in my case, especially, the inner child shuts down. She is stuck and she doesn't know that it's actually safe to grow up, that she survived, and that she can survive, she can thrive as well. So it's about bonding with that wounded part of yourself. And I'll be honest, Gurpreet, I didn't want to do it. I thought, I'm not doing this stuff, no way. And I used to think, this inner child, she's a pain in the butt. She's just, then I learned, well, she's a kid. Kids are pains in the butt. Of course, she's immature. So once I understood that we have to unite, that it's about becoming less fragmented because trauma fragments you. So I thought, I realized now I got to bond with her, accept her the way she is, and I have to work on having her trust me. And the more I do that, the more we bond, and I become whole, the more centered I become, the more grounded, and the more purposeful I have become. But because I didn't have it as a child, I need to do that nurturing through inner child bonding every day.
Wow.
Does that help?
Yeah. I already know what the inner child is. I got introduced to it last year through Reiki healing.
Yes.
So I took my spiritual practice to a next level.
Yep.
I got introduced. I stumbled upon Reiki healing on my own. It's because I was so committed to healing process that I'm going to call it what it is. Universe brought it to me, and I just jumped on it because I'm like, I knew it was for me, something I needed to do to take myself to the next level of my healing, and I did. That's when I learned the concept of inner child wounds and what it means, and guided meditation. Those that are listening, you can be, if you have fear, you may not be ready to sit down and write it out. But what you can do is you can actually do guided meditations to really unlock yourself or get started. Those that can't sit down and write and face that reality yet, there's nothing wrong with that. That just means that you're not ready. You're not there yet. But you need to get there. And to get there, you can take tons of ways to get there. And one of the best tools I found last year was guided meditation. I've never done a guided meditation. I have done meditation. I've been doing meditation. I'm like into Sikhism practice since I was 10. I've done meditation. But the guided meditation helped me really undiscover a lot of stuff that I wasn't even aware of mentally or subconsciously. I didn't even know my abandonment issues go far back to when my parents decided to put me and my sister in boarding school. And I was 7 years old. So in 3 years I spent in boarding school. And through the guided meditation, again, it didn't happen overnight. Like this year, through one guided meditation of doing guided meditation since like end of September last year, so 6, 7, 8 months process that I then one day doing another guided meditation realized, oh my God, it was that meditation where you have to picture yourself as a kid, whatever image comes, you stay with that image. And that's how I unlock, wait, oh my God, this whole time I thought my abandonment issue was X, but no, it stems back to when I was 7 and being put in a boarding school, I didn't see my parents for 3 years. So that's where a lot of the issues started stemming. So I just want to let everybody to know that, if you're not ready, if you're listening to the show, replay, or watching this live, if you're not ready, one of the best tools out there, and YouTube is the amazing channel that I like. There's tons of free tools like YouTube, Spotify.
Yeah.
You can start. If you can start, and you can start by doing guided meditation. Maybe you may not connect, but do something that you can connect to right from the get-go, because that will help you get to where you need to, and then be able to one day sit down and write it. I remember last year I wrote, this is summertime, before I was doing Reiki healing, I actually realized a lot of stuff that I was holding on to. I actually wrote letters to individuals who hurt me. And I actually wrote a whole letter, how they hurt me, what they did, how it hurt me. And then in the letters, I also forgave them, and I released it. And then I ripped the letter. I've done fire ceremony where I wrote whatever pains I was feeling. If it's for example, if it's with one person, I wrote everything that person did to me, like I'm literally talking to that person in this, and I'm writing it, and then I just burned that piece of paper and just release it. And I said I release it for good. Again, even if you say you release it good, some little things may still come up, and like you said, I let it go, I release it. So it's a journey, but it is a rewarding. At the end, it is rewarding. It may not seem rewarding in the beginning.
I'm gonna put Gurpreet, it's rewarding as you're doing it too.
Yes, it's liberating.
If you're listening, do not look for focus on the result, focus on the process. Be process oriented. What we're talking about here is connecting with your body. Most of us, and not even people with trauma like me, we are disconnected from our bodies. Put your phone down, go sit somewhere like a frog, and just sit and be. And you won't have to look externally for outer peace, because peace begins within. It doesn't begin without.
Exactly.
So once I understood, and my wonderful therapist said, Rosalin, you were disconnected from your body, you're going to connect with your body. That can mean taking a long, nice hot bath, maybe with some salts, sitting, as we talked about, sitting quietly. You are allowed to sit quietly for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes a day. And without an agenda, just sit and be quiet. If you have to close the blinds, do it, but do it for yourself. It's that simple. Your body knows what it wants. But the sad part is that most of us aren't listening. So if you're
We're
having
too
trouble,
busy trying to be busy
well,
than
again,
to listen to the inner voice that constantly talking to us, but we keep neglecting it or shoving it down deep so that we don't hear it. But it's gonna keep showing up because,
yep.
believe it or not, but we are destined to be where we need to be, and until we don't follow our path, that inner voice is gonna keep popping up to you and get you in alignment with where you need to go. And if you keep refusing it, you're going to have situations and situations to deal with because it's going to you're just prolonging where you need to go. You can get there faster if you just listen to your inner voice, or you can keep objecting and resisting. The more you resist, the more you're just prolonging where you need to go, and you're just creating more obstacles and challenges and situations that you don't need to. You don't need to suffer. Actually, the best word is that the more you resist, the more you're just creating your own pain and suffering.
Well, the more you resist, the more it persists.
Yes.
And you got to be aware you may be addicted to suffering. I thought and I had an unconscious belief that I am supposed to suffer. This is what I believed unconsciously, probably most of my life. And when I wrote it down 6 months ago, oh my God, so that's it. Oh God, no wonder I'm self sabotaging. Then I wrote back, I don't deserve to suffer. I don't know. And I was working with a woman 2 weeks ago. I do speed mentoring for Elevate, and we figured out that she was trying to do everything for everybody. She was training the new person who was replacing her, who wasn't doing well. I said, let's just stop here, and I'm inviting you to put all that down. She goes, what? I go, put all that you are not responsible for, put it down. Put your need to suffer down. And the tears flowed, and she got quiet, and she said, thank you for that. She goes, I didn't know I could put it down. I said, yes, you and millions of other women, you're not responsible for everybody else. Focus on yourself. And self care isn't self indulgent, it is what you need to take care of yourself. It's not a luxury. Self care is not a luxury. People think it's self indulgent. Being nice to yourself is wishy washy. No, it's not. When you've been kicked for a dog your whole life, do you really, how does that, it may get some results, but it damages your soul.
Yeah.
And I want to say, think, you talked about the inner voice. You got to figure out what the different voices. You have to label them. So you got your inner critic who lies to you all the time. Okay.
Yeah,
Got your
not that. Your
so
soul. Your soul. I
that's
refer to your soul talking to you.
okay. Because and then you've got, your inner child going, oh, you're always ignoring me. Like so for example, but even when you're ignoring your inner child, you can just start with, what do you need from me right now? And when
Mm-hmm.
I ask my inner child, she goes, I just want a hug. You got it. You got it. And I have a thing now, I call it the daily hug, where I hug my inner child because I didn't do it for the longest time. I forgot to do it. And sometimes I do forget to do it. But okay, oh, the daily hug, we're coming up. So let's do it, not rush into it, and hopefully she will trust me more. And it's been phenomenal for me. Yeah.
Okay, so we've gone 10 minutes over. Thank you so much for coming on, Rosalin, sharing your story, your journey, and sharing these
Pleasure.
wonderful advice and tips on how to address your fear, how to get unstuck. Now, who do you work with, and how can people reach out to you?
I work with people who are really stuck and lost, people who don't know where to start, people who lack confidence, people who were me, essentially, people who are admitting to being a work in progress, and people who need to be kind to themselves. So, anyone who's in work transition, I especially love to work with people who lack clarity in their thinking, who just muddled thinkers. And I teach them through, their thought analysis. And coupled with becoming better writers, we really target and figure out how to make you become a better communicator overall, because you can't divorce it from writing. And I also love to work with people who have trouble expressing their emotions, and that's in a one-on-one writing. So I worked with the daughter of two Holocaust survivors this year, and it probably was the most rewarding work of my life. It made me a better listener, a better teacher. And as she said, she loved the way we disagreed respectfully. And that meant a lot to me. So, anybody who really needs help and who's not looking for a quick fix and who isn't afraid of being honest about fear and whatever else they're struggling with, that's who I help.
Okay, great. And how can they reach you? LinkedIn? Do you have a website, email address?
Got a website, but come to LinkedIn, sure, send me a message. I answer very quickly.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. This was very profound and powerful to talk about these things. And I think a lot of times we run away to really talk about these stuff, which we should be doing more often and daily, so that we create that safe space, safety net for people to talk openly about these issues, because that's the only way to move forward. It's the only way to make this world a better place, and us as individuals to be better with ourselves and one another, is to be creating these avenues where we can feel vulnerable to talk about these things. And it's actually not a weakness to be vulnerable. It's the most strongest, most powerful thing a human being poses, is to be vulnerable. And if we're willing, if we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, major breakthroughs happen. Actually, a lot of my breakthroughs have happened by me talking about it, me being vulnerable about it. Last week, I cried on my own LinkedIn live show with Rob, which is my coach. But I had the most major breakthrough that day after the segment. And I just want everyone to know that, you know, breakthroughs can happen every day if you're willing to talk about it. Yeah, and that's no change in your life if you're not willing to be honest with yourself first, and then just talking, even if it's with the friend. And sometimes I found that sometimes the best people to talk to are the ones that are not your friends, and not even your family member. Sometimes it's amazing how many things can come just talking to a complete stranger, someone who's not connected to you, because you know why, and mentally kind of feel safe to talk to this person because this person doesn't know you. Whereas we may feel scared to talk to a friend. What are they going to think? They may judge me. But a complete stranger has no reason to judge you because they don't know anything about you. So I encourage anybody, the first step is just talk to yourself, or find someone to talk to, friend, family, a complete stranger, to just relieve that turmoil that's going inside you. But it's happening for a reason. Don't ignore it. Don't run away from it.
I'll say one thing. Just start right now. Just acknowledge it. Today, if you're feeling overwhelmed, say, you know what, I'm feeling overwhelmed, and you sit with it for 3 minutes. Sit with it, but you got to acknowledge it. If you can't acknowledge it, you can't address it.
And don't be too busy. I think people who don't even have time for themselves are just running away. Those that create busy lives are just actually just running away from facing the reality of what's happening inside of them. The questions that are arising inside, that turmoil that's happening inside, all you're doing is running. And by running is by you creating a life where you don't have to think about anything, and you're just on the go, 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 go. And that I call running. You are running. You're just running, and you can only run so far. It's still going to catch up to you.
That's right. Sit down, slow down, and tune in.
And make time for yourself. It's sad when I hear when people say, I'm too busy, I don't even have time for myself. And my first incident is,
you're choosing.
Yeah, exactly. You're choosing not to make time because you don't want to face the reality of what you're feeling inside. And hence you create that busy life to run away from it. So technically,
a life of distraction.
Not busy. You choosing to be busy because you're choosing not to face the reality of what's really happening inside of you. Right. And again, you can only avoid it for so long, right? Eventually there's going to be a push And that's not a pretty place to be in, but hey, if you've been avoiding it for so long, then that's what's going to happen, right? That
Right.
explosion's going to happen, because again, you can only run from it so much. Thank you once again, Rosalin, for being here. Thank you for sharing this. If anybody wants to get unstuck, feel free to reach out to Rosalin on LinkedIn. Happy to do a consultation with you to see if there's a potential good fit for her to be able to help you. And on that note, I'm going to end this segment. I'll be back next week with another guest. And until then, please keep safe, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.